Good evening and welcome back to the Double 18 podcast live stream edition. I'm your host, Stephen Nagishi. It's Friday. Thank you very much for joining us on this Friday, the Valentine's Day. I assume that there will be a lot of people out there and about, dinner or whatever with their loved ones tonight. But thank you for joining us on this Friday night. With me, as always, normally it is my co-host Ken Fang and or Bears YouTuber Rashab Shakiri, but I am very, very excited to welcome back the guest that I've had for more than a year ago. If you hear the name Lester Wiltfong, I'm sure if you're a Bears fan, you're very familiar with his work as the editor-in-chief of the WindyCity GridIron.com, the one-stop page for all things Chicago Bears. It is the editor-in-chief, Lester Wiltfong. Lester, good evening, and thank you for joining me on this Friday night. And, hopefully 2025 has been treating you very, very well so far.
So far, so good, Steven. How you doing tonight?
It's good. It's good. Just got off work over an hour ago, got my dinner, and I am ready to go. So, all right. So if you're watching this, if you're a Bears fan, thank you for watching us. And hopefully you will be able to ask Lester or myself any questions or things that you want to ask about the Bears. Feel free to send us comments or questions along the way. All right, Lester, let's start off with the news that's fresh on the minds of everybody, if you're a Bears fan. The passing of Virginia McCaskey, a couple of weeks ago at the age of 102. This kind of came out of nowhere. I knew that, she was well over 100 years old, and we didn't hear too much about her health status, obviously, but what did you think of her passing and then the legacy that she left as the owner of the Chicago Bears?
Yeah, I mean, when you get up in triple digits, I mean, it could be your time anytime. So she was 102, right. But like you said, man, there was no indication she was ill. If she was behind the scenes, the family kept it under wraps. So kudos to them for keeping their private life private. But look, like most Bears fans, I didn't realize how much impact Virginia McCaskey had on the franchise and on the NFL as a whole. But then her passing, man, the stories coming out about her. Tom Waddle just did a Bears Banter podcast on our Second City Gridiron channel, and he talked about the service. He talked about how she meant to the franchise behind the scenes, how everyone knew that when you go to Hallis Hall, if you see her, it's it. It's time to be on your best behavior. She is the boss. I mean, that's how kind of all the players kind of always felt about her. So I had no idea the impact she had. And then she was up for the Hall of Fame this last time, and she didn't make it, of course, but there was people saying, why is she up for the Hall of Fame just because she's getting older? But maybe she did have an impact. I mean, it wasn't really on-field stuff, but she did a lot of stuff behind the scenes, charitable contributions, stuff she's done for women in sports and stuff. So, maybe sometime, she'll get a place in the Hall of Fame because of all the impact she has had with the NFL.
Mm-hmm. So, obviously, with her passing, the question that's been on the mind of many, many Bears fans, even well before her passing, was the future ownership of the Chicago Bears. So far, a lot of rumors are out there that the Bears might be looking to maybe sell, not immediately, but in due time, because, the kids have, small portions of the ownership that wants to sell and get out of it, because obviously the inheritance tax is going to be astronomical. I believe Illinois is one of the few states that actually that has, excuse me, and if you please correct me on this, that has inheritance tax that the Bears ownership would likely have to pay millions in. What are you hearing about the is there any succession plan, or did her passing, it just came out of nowhere, and that the Bears were, I don't want to blame anybody for in times like this, but this came out of nowhere that the Bears were not really prepared for the the succession plan or something like that?
From what I understand, it's pretty much a league rule. You have to have a succession plan in place. There has to be one for every franchise, so all 32 teams have one in case there's something with ownership. So that plan's been in place for who knows how long. I'm sure it's been tweaked, changed here and there, but look, the NFL loves the Hallis family owning the Chicago Bears. So
Yeah.
I'm sure there's going to be some sort of issue. Maybe some of the grandkids or they want to sell off some of the stock, but I just have a hard time believing that some guy's going to swoop in and just kind of buy the team off the Bears. I don't see it happening. I think it's going to stay in the family. I think that's something that's important to the family, to George McCaskey, Michael McCaskey, the older McCaskey people there. I think that's something they want to keep it, and I don't think that the league would really want them to sell it off because, I mean, it's cool. I mean, it's the founding team, still owned by the founding fathers. I think that's one of the things that the league wants to kind of hold on to, and it can have that piece of history.
Mm-hmm. So the news came out this morning, or at least today or yesterday, that the Giants, much like the McCaskey family, are owned by the the families
The Maras,
amongst the Maras. Now they announced today that they are looking to sell 10% of their ownership, and I'm wondering, maybe there have been some talks that private equity are being encouraged to, get involved in this. Uh, so, do you foresee something like this as a like the trend within the NFL, and maybe that the Bears could perhaps look to sell portions of their like 10% of their ownership to, like a billionaire, like, say, for example, I'm just spitballing here, Mark Cuban, who is from, who went to University of Indiana and no longer has the control of the Mavericks in light of their crazy trade with the Lakers of Luka Doncic, and he probably wants to, leave NBA, or, maybe another wealthy private equity firm that would buy the team to maybe, eventually facilitate the sale. Not necessarily now, but maybe in a not too distant future. Do you think this is kind of a trend that maybe Bears might get into?
Yeah, I think it was maybe last year or the year before that, there was a new rule the NFL put in place where you can do these things with these equity deals. I'm not sure the finances behind it, the economics behind it. All I know is there was something passed by the league where it allows this now. So yeah, I think
and I believe that's the 10% is the maximum that they can.
I believe that is the max. I think the Giants are, of course, they're in the news now. I think there may have been one other team that did it, maybe a few months back did it. So yeah, I mean, this is something I think all teams should probably explore. It's a great way to kind of bring some cash into the franchise. I mean, the Bears own the Bears. I mean, the McCaskies, that's their thing. That's not like, they don't have like Walmart on the side like they do with the Broncos owner. I mean, this is their baby. This is what they have. So if they can get a chance to kind of bring some new money into the franchise, I think it's something that all smart teams are going to try and do right now.
So looking back at the Bears this past year, it was just a tumultuous one, especially the Washington game, where everything just completely collapsed, and the firing of Matt Eberflus midseason and Shane Waldron a few weeks before that, and all those things. Looking back, Lester, as you had to, write, edit articles, etc., etc. What stood out to you the most about this past year's Bears that, maybe a couple of things that stood out to you, both positive and negative, when you look back at the Bears in 2024?
Well, I think luckily things worked out how they did. I mean, as fans, we were all livid with Matt Eberflus, right? The way he kind of managed late game situations. Many fans wanted him gone after his last seasons of work, but, I guess if you look at it and trying to spin the negative into a positive, I guess it's good that it worked out like it did, because, it gave this franchise the chance to go ahead and get Ben Johnson, who is, he is the top, offensive mind on the market. He was the top head coach candidate now for 2 cycles. He decided to stay in Detroit last year. He decided to make the jump this year. It seemed like the Bears were always one of his top choices this season. I mean, it was all about Caleb. I mean, that's kind of what he talked about. That's what the rumor was out there. So, Caleb's rookie year was very uneven. I mean, it started off really bad. Obviously, the first game, I think he had like 90 some yards passing. It was the worst game of his young career, but sprinkled along around the way, 4 300-yard passing games, something no other rookie has done in Bears history. He's just done some stuff where, the wow throws were there. There's some issues to work out. Of course, he's a rookie in the NFL. He had a bad situation around him, which is ironic because we all thought it was the best situation going into it. Like many, I was fooled by the Shane Waldron hype. I thought he was going to be a great guy to come in with Caleb, but they didn't mesh, didn't work out. He was let go, obviously. I think him and Thomas Brown had a nice thing going for a little while there, but then when Thomas Brown had to take over and be the head coach, some of the offense kind of fell apart there. But, this franchise now is in a good place. I think that's the most important thing, to kind of look back and see what happened with the last season.
Yeah. I'm just so glad that the Bears finally made the move. Welcome to the 21st century, I guess.
Right.
But yeah, but it's just that the thing that really stood out to me, of course, was the lack of accountability coming from Matt Eberflus himself on a weekly basis. He was, this was something that I've been complaining about ever since he was hired. It seems as though he was always throwing the players under the bus, and then not taking his own accountability very, very seriously. And it really finally caught up to him. The way the players were openly complaining about, Cole Kmet going to CHGO, podcast, etc. It seems as though everybody had a negative opinion on Matt Eberflus, and I'm just so happy that the Bears finally decided to pull the plug, and the way that he handled the Packers game, the offensive ineptness against the New England Patriots, the Minnesota game where they took the game to overtime, but still ended up falling short. And then a few days later in Thanksgiving game, they had 30 seconds left with one timeout, and they couldn't even take a damn timeout, or at least try and score, or at least score a field goal or whatever. They made no concrete effort in that game. And I think the way they did, I think it was just a final nail to the coffin. But all of this negativity that we had to deal with this past season led to the hiring, of highly coveted Ben Johnson, who was the Lions offensive coordinator, who led the innovative offense that was with the Lions, and way Jared Goff really took off under his tutelage and everything. When you were following the Bears coach search, was there any point in time you thought, yeah, there's no way in hell the Bears are going to get Ben Johnson? They're going to just settle for some mediocre dude like, Mike McCarthy, high floor, low ceiling, or maybe, if we're lucky, I was thinking, okay, maybe Todd Monken would be a better choice over Mike McCarthy because of, Monken's history with Lamar Jackson, winning national titles in Georgia, head coaching experience, and also, he's from Wheaton, so I'm sure he would have loved to have come home. But where were you doing the entire search? The insane amount of candidates that they were interviewing, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, Monken was my number 2 choice behind Ben Johnson. For me, it was Ben Johnson or bust. It had to be Ben Johnson. It seemed like that everything was falling in place for the Bears to hire Ben Johnson. We heard about the rumor last year. He was interested in the Bears before he decided to, obviously Flus wasn't fired. So, he kind of did a couple interviews and went back. Then it came out that he said he's only going to interview if he's serious for the job. He took the Bears interview, of course, so there was some smoke. And then all of a sudden the Raiders thing came up, and all that buzz was created by the Raiders side of things. None of that was coming out of Ben Johnson's camp. And when Bill had Rick Smith, his agent, on our podcast, he kind of talked about the story there. And it was just one of those things where he's like, well, look, the smoke's out there. I'm not going to squash it. He said, we'll just let it play out, see what happens. And but Bears fans, man, we were freaking out because what looked like a sure thing, now there was doubt. But then it kind of, as everything kind of went, it was funny because I recorded the podcast the morning he was hired. I was off that day. Me and Jeff, we did a podcast. Literally, we hit end. We cut it up, put it on a podcast channel. I check my phone. Bears hire Ben Johnson. I'm like, are you kidding me? We did not expect it to happen that quick, but that just goes to show you how much he wanted the Bears, and he believed in what they were doing there.
Right.
Him and Ryan Poles, they must have meshed really good there. Kevin Warren kind of helped seal the deal there. He trusts and believes in what the Bears franchise is doing as a whole. And that's the alignment he spoke of. He wanted everyone in the building to have the same vision forward. And he felt it from the Bears. He believed it, and then he accepted that job.
Yeah. I never thought that this was going to happen. I mean, he interviewed with the Bears only one time. This was actually, I think, on the 11th of January through Zoom.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people were kind of upset about the Bears having to interview like a bunch of candidates that had no shot. But one thing people needed to remember was the Bears and every other organization had to comply with the Rooney Rule, which you had to bring in 2 minority candidates into your own building. So in this case, the Bears had to bring the candidate into House Hall for an actual interview. Not like the sham that was in the process, like the New England Patriots did when they interviewed Byron Leftwich and I forgot one other candidate that was there.
Pep Hamilton, the Patriots,
Pep Hamilton, the former Bears,
the Patriots went through those interviews so quick. I mean,
I know it was done. It was done. In one day, to meet the candidate, and then the next day they hired Mike Vrabel. So it's a bit of a sham process itself.
It is.
But the Bears had to wait because obviously Ben Johnson was still also, coaching the Detroit Lions, and if you're in the playoffs, you had to have like a certain time dates where you were available for an interview. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I think Ben was actually available for an interview the day the Lions played, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct, I think?
No, I think it was the Saturday before.
Oh, the Saturday, the week before. Okay. Okay. And it was so funny because I live in
the teams that were playing that weekend were allowed to have at least a Zoom interview.
Right. And it's funny because I live in Detroit area, and then the way the Washington whipped the Detroit, and then the Ben Johnson leaving, and the Lions fans freaking out and getting upset. I'm sure you've probably seen their reaction on social media there. Yeah. It's kind of funny because this is what happens when you enjoy success, And I think and you can probably attest and, sympathize with this. When you, gain more experience and when you get, noticed and you have an opportunity to advance in your career, you have to take that opportunity. It's understandable, you can stay in one place and, develop a family or, have a shot at winning Super Bowls, etc. But, for a guy like Ben Johnson, who's ambitious and who's smart and talented, you have to have that opportunity. And then he took it and ran with it. His time in Detroit was simply incredible. As a Bears fan, you probably saw the game in December where, the fumble. That was a thing of a genius and everything. So, but what do you think that this hiring has kind of changed the perception of the Bears around the league? What are you hearing about this latest hiring and how the Bears were actually able to pull this off?
Yeah, I mean, just the fact that the Bears pulled it off, I mean, right away, it got them a lot of national kudos, right? I mean, for the longest time, the Bears franchise was a laughingstock. I mean, that was they were like the national joke. Some of the stuff they were doing behind the scenes, even their interview process at the time, because they said they cast such a wide net, they were getting criticized by a lot of national pundits. Right. Then it comes out, and again, we'll go back to that Rick Smith interview. He kind of talked about the process. He's like, look, the reason that teams do that is because they want to talk to as many people as possible. It's an information gathering time. And the way the league sets these interviews up anyway is you have to wait anyway. Like you said, there's the Rooney Rule they have to comply to. There are teams that are playing, they have to wait for them to be available. So should the Bears have sat on their hands during this time? No, they're going to go out and they're going to try and talk to as many people as possible, interview as much as they can, gather information. Who knows? Maybe in 2 years, the guy they just interviewed, he'll be available. And now the Bears have a relationship. They like where they talked to him before. They can bring him in. That's kind of the whole point of the process. So a lot of positivity about the Bears. And then of course, Ben Johnson is, like I said, was the top candidate on the market. That he's getting paid. I think he's a top 10 paid coach in the NFL right now. I think he slots in at number 7 or 8. Obviously, he's the most the Bears ever paid for a head coach. So,
right,
the Bears aren't cheap. I mean, this is not the old school Bears. This is the Bears spending what they have to spend to make it happen. So that I think that the tide is shifted. People are trying to see the Bears in a different light.
My guest tonight is Lester Wiltfong, writer and editor-in-chief of WindyCity GridIron.com, part of the SB Nation network. Now, the hiring of Ben Johnson certainly was a shock, but the man who kind of helped facilitated or changed the perception of the Bears around the league, or maybe at least convinced the other McCaskies to do things differently than the last coaching hiring cycle, where they were literally tapping into Trace Armstrong, the ex-Bears, and then nothing else. But Kevin Warren's presence cannot be, ignored. And I think a lot of people, enjoy taking shots at Warren because he's people remind him of a politician or etc. But it's undeniable that his presence has completely changed the, inside the Bears. And whether you like it or not, he's changing the way Bears do business. Warren has done wonders, obviously, with the Minnesota and landing of that beautiful downtown stadium. And also, his time with Big Ten as a commissioner, even though there's a bit of a controversy during COVID and everything. But this man knows what he's doing. Has your perception of Kevin Warren has changed from the time he was hired to where we are right now? Or do you feel like I'm still waiting for him to figure out what the hell they're going to do with the stadium right now?
I've always been high on the hire. I thought when the Bears made the move, I think it was the best. He was the best candidate on the market. You talk about stuff he did with the Big Ten, stuff he did with the Vikings. He worked for the Lions. He worked for the Rams. I mean, he has 30 years of experience in either the NFL or Big Ten, which is obviously big time football, right? So
sure.
Fans saying, hey, we need a football guy. They were so sick of Ted Phillips, who came up as an accountant.
Yes,
to where he kind of got to where he was in his position as the team president. Did Kevin Warren play in the NFL? No, he did not play in the NFL, but he has a lot of experience on both the player side of things as an agent and on the franchise, the team side of things. So he's bringing a wealth of knowledge to this. The stadium deal, the old Arlington Heights, that was Ted Phillips' deal, right?
Yeah.
So Kevin Warren comes in. Maybe he didn't like the parameters of the deal. And we kind of saw the way the taxes worked out. Like when Kevin Warren stepped in, a lot of fans thought that deal was done. It turned out the tax thing was a big issue. I mean, that was a big problem. They were fighting with the Village for a long time. Cook County had a lot of issues with the taxes there. They had to get all that hammered out. And Arlington Heights and Cook County, they've really changed. I mean, they've kind of, they're back to now wanting the Bears, and the Bears are now they have options. So I think Kevin Warren really, really wants Chicago. I think he has a vision of the lakefront stadium in his mind. And I don't know if you've been to Arlington Heights, it does not compare. Like as far as the aesthetics of how the building would look, the stadium would look, I think he has a vision of his new stadium being the jewel of Lake Michigan. I think that's what he wants. But I think that the deal with Arlington Heights is sweet enough as the McCaskey family, because that, you can build hotels, casinos, restaurants. You can have an entire district there dedicated to your team on game days. It's there all year long, a pro shop. I think financially it makes more sense to go to Arlington Heights. But at the end of the day, that's not a bad consolation being downtown Chicago.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, the funding of the stadium has become a bit of a hot button issue all across the country. Where using taxpayer money to fund the stadium has been somewhat controversial. And, in this case, the Bears are, no exception. But how do you see this eventually ending up? This is the question that I asked about the 10% rule on the private equity or the new ownership. Do you think that's kind of the possibility where the Bears would have to sell, maybe 10% of the ownership, or even if maybe half of it or 49% of it to a new owner to kind of use that money to fund the stadium? Or do you feel like J.B. Pritzker will eventually I don't want to say cave in, but throw some money into the building of the new stadium, wherever it might be.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not sure the whole how the taxes work. That's out of my wealth of knowledge there.
Yeah, me too. Yes.
But it's one of those things where, look, the Bears don't have the money. I mean, they're not like I said, they're not like the Walmart family, or they're not the Amazon, they're not the Bezos. They don't have that kind of money where they can just do it themselves. But even these big time franchises, they try and leverage the state. So it's something they're going to try and do, because look, if the stadium is built, wherever it's built, it's going to bring in a ton of money in taxes for whether it's Chicago or Arlington Heights, wherever there's a ton of money going to come in for taxes. It's going to be a huge on game days. Obviously, it's going to bring so much stuff into your village or into your city. Super Bowls, concerts, Final Fours, WrestleManias. You were talking about, it's going to be huge for the economy when it goes up. So I can see the Bears holding pat and saying, look, you guys should kind of kick in something, because you're going to benefit from this in the long run. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where if you got the option to kind of sell off 10%, kind of bring some of that equity and kind of, help fund your project, I think you have to do it.
Mm-hmm. So when it's all said and done, do you think it will still be somewhere in Chicago? It's not the waterfront area like near the current Soldier Field, but it's in somewhere a little bit further south where the hospital, I believe, that's located.
Yeah, I think there's a couple. I know they talk about like the south parking lot, I think, was on the table for a while. There's another option now. I like I said, I know the city wants them really bad. I mean, but Arlington Heights kind of, they met some of their tax demands. So I don't go to games, to be honest with you. I mean, if someone buys me tickets, I'll go. But for the most part, I'm not going to games. It's just it's like I'd rather watch the game from the comfort of my couch. I enjoy it that way. I'm just doing my thing. So it doesn't affect me personally. I just think for the franchise, it's going to be one of those things where they got to feel what's best for the long term for the franchise. And like I said, I think Arlington Heights makes the most sense. They already spent the money there. They have a much bigger footprint. They can kind of do other things there. So now the McCaskies will have other ways to make money instead of just having, the football team. Will have the entire, district there to kind of, own. But man, on the lakefront, like Warren wants it, that's going to look kind of cool too. So for me, it doesn't matter. It's just one of the things where what makes the most sense for the franchise.
Do you think this is going to be a power struggle between the Warren and the McCaskies over this issue, or do you feel like that's not going to be anything to worry about?
I mean, it's possible. I mean, Warren was brought in to get the deal done. I mean, there was already a deal. Like I said, the Ted Phillips deal was in place. We've heard stories about how Phillips and George McCaskey were so tight. So, there may be some hard feelings there. But at the end of the day, you hired Kevin Warren to do a job. If you trust him to do his job, let him do his job. We're kind of seeing it happen here with how the Bears are running now. They went all out to get Ben Johnson. If he doesn't feel Arlington Heights is the best deal on the table, look, regardless, you're going to have a state of the art dome stadium, multi-purpose, multi-use. It's going to be one of these things where it's going to be the gem of wherever it is. So it's going to be a positive, but we'll kind of see what happens with the best deal on the table.
All right, let's kind of start looking into the off season a little bit now that the Super Bowl is over. But speaking of Super Bowl, Lester, I'm sure you probably saw the game itself, and the way that the Eagles completely manhandled the Chiefs are a little bit surprised. What were your thoughts entering this game, and who were you favoring actually in this one?
I had a feeling the Chiefs would win. I realized the Eagles had a better top to bottom roster. I just thought the Patrick Mahomes factor would kind of kick in at some point and some magic would happen and it would just work out for him, because pretty much this whole season they've done it. I mean, they have not played their best football, but somehow, some way, Mahomes found a way to pull games out. I thought it would happen again. It didn't. I mean, obviously, what Howie Roseman has done with the Eagles, he has built a fantastic roster, top to bottom. Jalen Hurts is often criticized, but I mean, he's a pretty damn good quarterback. He fits what they want to do. They obviously have a really good offensive line there. The defensive line is pretty good. Vic Fangio was the star of that Super Bowl. What he did defensively, he didn't blitz once. He trusted his front four to do what they had to do. He did a lot of disguised coverages in the back end, and he kind of made life miserable for Mahomes. And that was as much as it wasn't a fun Super Bowl to kind of watch because it was just very boring as far as the score goes.
Yeah.
It was kind of neat seeing how Vic Fangio kind of just did what he had his way, and it was just a kudos to Vic, and he finally got that ring.
Mm-hmm. I was telling Lester before we went live, I happened to be in the South Jersey, Philly area for work the last 3 weeks. I took my a guest, a colleague from Japan who's never watched a football or Super Bowl, much less. And while we were there, we saw the NFC Championship at B-Dubs, and then I took him to a Super Bowl watch party at a nearby sports bar. And then we witnessed the whole thing, and then afterwards we went to Dick's Sporting Goods near our hotel, and there were like so many fans already lined up. Probably they left knowing that the game was already in the bag, and we waited about half an hour to get in the Dick's Sporting Goods to buy some winning merchandises and everything. And I'm thinking that hopefully this is something that the Bears fans, you and I and everybody else out there, could experience this one of these days. And the hiring of Ben Johnson kind of re-energized our fan base and the organization to a degree. And looking at the Super Bowl and the Bears, I think it kind of coincides with the what they need to do this offseason, and that's kind of build the trenches on both sides, because the Eagles were just flat out impressive on offensive line and their defensive line as well. Looking into this offseason, let's start with the guys who are probably maybe who is going to thrive or who is going to maybe might likely to be gone, when the new year kicks in. Who are some of the players who you think will thrive under Ben Johnson?
Are you talking about the trenches, or are you talking about overall?
Just talking about the overall team. Regardless of the possession, do you have anybody that you can think of on top of your head that's like, yeah, this guy's going to do very well with Ben Johnson?
Yeah, I think he's going to really do something with the passing game. Obviously, Caleb Williams will obviously benefit, but I think DJ Moore, I think he can kind of do a lot of stuff that Amon-Ra St. Brown does with Detroit. I mean, they're similarly built. DJ Moore may be a little better of an athlete. But Amon-Ra St. Brown maybe a little bit of a route runner, but there's some things you can do with them because DJ Moore is so good running after the catch. So I think that Ben Johnson will kind of utilize that. We even saw this last year. DJ Moore got a chance to kind of carry the ball out of the backfield a bit because he is so good with the ball in his hands. So I think Ben Johnson will do that. I think Rome Odunze is going to thrive in year 2. A lot of fans look at him and say, man, he had a terrible year. He had like 700 yards receiving as a rookie with 2 veterans ahead of him on the depth chart. I mean, I thought Rome Odunze had a pretty good year.
Yeah.
There was some drops, obviously. There were some missed blocks, obviously. But there were also some highlight reel catches. I mean, some go up and get it stuff. I think he was one of the top receivers in contested catch rate this last season as a rookie. Right. So there's a lot of positivity there. I think Cole Kmet's going to thrive. He had a really down year this last year. I know part of it is because they brought in Keenan Allen. So a lot of those catches that you normally go to Kmet, those short zones, went to kind of Keenan Allen. But the thing with Ben Johnson is he knows how to run an offense. He knows how to sequence plays. He knows how to marry the running game with the passing game. So we're going to see play action like it should look. I mean, it's going to work finally. It's going to be something that they're going to lean on. And it's good because Caleb Williams was great last year in play action. They just didn't do it very often. So I think we'll see him kind of do that more. Obviously, got to upgrade the offensive line a little bit. I think Trey Smith's obvious guy they're going to target immediately. As soon as they're allowed to talk to him, they're going to talk to him. I'm sure they already have feelers out there, kind of with back channels to know what they have to offer him. But It's going to be huge. It's going to be probably the biggest guard contract in the history of the league. So, but that's a cost of doing business. You have to go out there and you have to get Trey Smith. He's that good. You have to go out and another guy in the interior because you're losing Tevin Jenkins. Coleman Shelton is another free agent. So you're going to have to spend some money to bolster your interior. I think you're fine at tackle. I love Darnell Wright. I think Braxton Jones is probably good enough. But look, if a left tackle's there in the draft at 10 and you trust him and you think that's your guy, your scouts trust to bring him in, and you bring him in, he competes, and you let the best man win, I think you're fine. I go, it's never a bad idea to bring in talented linemen, right? Let them figure it out. They'll figure it out on the field. So if you bring in a guy and he ends up beating out Braxton Jones, hey, so be it. Now you have a damn good swing tackle. So I think you got to upgrade there, and I think the Bears have the cap space and the draft capital to do so.
Now there were some people, I think maybe ESPN Chicago was actually throwing some crazy theory about, not necessarily getting rid of, but maybe moving on from, Cole Kmet. I'm sure you probably heard about this.
I saw that across my Twitter feed. Yeah.
Right. I saw that either. Is that I'm sure, nothing is etched in stone and anything can happen, but I would think that, Johnson would enjoy having Cole Kmet. Okay, maybe, Cole Kmet is not Travis Kelce or anybody else that we were hoping for. And, sometimes he drop easy passes like we witnessed, this year, or with some blocks. But I think he's still a very serviceable guy that, maybe you would thrive in a different, coaching staff. And, Ben Johnson certainly had an incredible usage of Sam Laporta. Are you kind of, scratching your head as to why the Bears or, whoever's out there wanting to get rid of Cole Kmet so quickly?
So I saw that tweet, right? It was ESPN 1000, and I guess the tweet was taken out of context. It was one of those things where they were just floating ideas of who could save the most money. They weren't really talking about how they could actually do it, but they said if they did it, if they cut Kmet, they could save X amount of dollars, which I get it. But look, that's a silly conversation because that's not happening. I mean, Cole Kmet is, he is an above average tight end. He has pretty good hands. Has he had a couple drops? Yeah. I mean, every player has a couple drops. Travis Kelce has a couple drops. The thing is with Cole Kmet is he's solid. He understands how to play that Y role. He's your inline blocker. Yeah. He's not George Kittle. He's not going to block like that. He's not Travis Kelce. He's not going to catch like that, but he's an above average player. Like I said, with the play action coming back into vogue now with Ben Johnson and the Bears, the tight end is a big beneficiary of a good play action. If you marry your run game and your pass game, everything looks the same. Those tight ends are sneaking out and catching easy passes. Cole Kmet is 6'6". He's a big bodied guy. He can box those people out. He can find himself a little soft spot in the zone. He can leak out there on those in the flat route. He will get his. And Ben Johnson last year, he used 2 tight end personnel, I think, more than any other team in the league. So he understands the value of the position. Kmet does not play like Laporta. Laporta's a move guy. I mean, he's more U than he is Y. Right. So they play something different. So you'll see Kmet moved around a little bit, but for the most part, he'll be your Y. He'll be sneaking out there and making these catches. And if you marry your play action and your run game correctly, he's going to leak out and have some wide open catches.
So when you look at the Super Bowl, obviously Trey Smith is the name that is very much popular among the Bear fans. It's kind of like a maybe Trey Smith or bust type of deal right now. But I was looking at the Eagles, and they got a couple of interesting free agents on that side of the ball there. 2 defenders, most noticeably Josh Sweat, who had 2.5 sacks and probably should have won the Super Bowl MVP. Milton Williams, the name who not many people are familiar with, but man, he had an incredible game. 2 sacks, 4 tackles in that game. 3 technique player that the Bears have been really, really desperate for, probably for a long, long time, since maybe Tommy Harris was with the team more than 20 years ago. And then also Mekhi Becton, who was a real bust with the Jets as a tackle. He come to the Eagles on a 1-year deal. He played guard. Had a phenomenal year, stay healthy. Obviously, the Bears need a guard, but, I do worry that the guy like Becton leaves Philadelphia. He becomes like no better than Tevin Jenkins in terms of, dealing with injuries and everything. Of the 3 players that I just mentioned on the Eagles, if you could pick 1 or even 2, whoever it is, Lester, who would you sign?
Yeah, I think those two defenders would really help the Bears. I think the O-line needs more work in Chicago, obviously, because you're losing all three of your interior guys.
Yeah.
But we saw last year this defense really fell apart when they lost Andrew Billings. I mean, that's silly that your whole D line can kind of fall apart when you lose a nose tackle. But that's because they didn't have any depth. So I think if you bring in Sweat, another Sweat on the other side, I think that's a guy that kind of come in and he can kind of get it done there. And the another 3 tech, because I like Dexter. I think he's a good player. But you need someone else. You need some more bodies in there. So I think regardless, the Bears this offseason is going to be a lot of trenches. Whether it's free agency or the draft. I mean, that's where the team needs the most work.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, they have the draft capital. It's a very strong defensive tackle draft from what I understand. They have the draft capital to kind of address the trenches on the defensive side of the ball. They have the money. I think there's 6th or 7th in free agent dollars that available to them for the salary cap. So they're going to spend money there. So you're going to address, O-line, D-line. And then I think you're going to go out and get, maybe a wide receiver 3. You're going to get a tight end 2. But we're not talking break the bank guys. I think their big money is going to be spent, and their big draft capital will be spent in the trenches.
Mm-hmm. So that means at this point you're probably going to wait bye to Keenan Allen, right?
I think I like Keenan Allen. I think he still has something to offer, but the money's got to come down. Obviously, we'll see if his market materializes. Look, you need 3 receivers in the NFL. I mean, you do. You have to have 3 guys. It's a 3 receiver league. Even though Ben Johnson runs a ton of double tight, he runs a ton of 3 receiver sets too. So you want to have versatility. Keenan Allen brings that. I think Keenan Allen was miscast last year. I know he kind of he played the same position he did when he was in the Chargers, but he just wasn't running the same routes that he did in LA. I mean, he was doing too much deep stuff. I mean, he is at this point in his career, he's more like a move tight end. You got to use him like that, on the shorter stuff, go out there and find a spot in the zone and just settle in there. That's who he is. He's not running away from defenders. That's not who he is at this point in his career. I'm not sure he ever could do that. So yeah, I think Keenan Allen's probably gone. Just I think he may want to go back out to the West Coast. Maybe the Rams might make sense for Keenan Allen.
Mm-hmm. Lester Wiltfong is our guest editor-in-chief of the SB Nation's WindyCity GridIron.com. Stephen Nagishi on this Valentine's Day night. Thanks for joining us on this live stream edition. We're talking all things Chicago Bears. So who do you think outside of Allen might be like, yeah, this guy may have played his final game or down with the Bears?
I hope it's not, because I like him as a player, but I think Tevin Jenkins may be done.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think just the injury aspect. Yeah. I think you just can't take too much of a risk on a guy like that.
I think with Jenkins though is he'll obviously test his market. Yeah. But like, what does Tevin want at this point in his career? I mean, is he looking for just the highest paycheck at this point? I mean, I know he just had a kid. I think he's married. So it's one of those things where maybe he's just looking for more security. Maybe he enjoys where he lives. Maybe he's built a home in the Chicagoland area. So maybe he's willing to take less. Who knows what the players want to do? But it's funny. You look at all the top free agent lists out there, right? All the top guards in the market, Tevin's one of them. I mean, he's one of the top guards in the market.
Exactly. Yes.
So at the end of the day, if you're like, well, we're going to sign Trey Smith and then we're going to send a lesser guy. We're going to sign a guy for a little less. Jenkins could be the guy you sign for a little less, but all it takes is one team, right, to go out there and say, hey, we're going to give Tevin Jenkins, a buku money. I mean, if that's what it takes, if one team offers him a ton, he may take it. But if the market never materializes, if it's something that's, fairly team friendly, maybe he comes back. I just, it's especially with a new regime coming in, you never know. I think if it was the old regime still, I think they would let him walk, because we already saw them kind of try to push him aside before. They moved him around right side, left side. They kind of never really valued what he brought to the table. But with a new regime, maybe Ben Johnson and his staff will say, look, no, and I think Tevin Jenkins is a keeper. Let's offer him something that's comparable to the market.
Right.
And maybe he sticks around, but we'll see how that plays out.
Another popular name that is linked to the Bears in the upcoming free agency is Drew Dahlman, the center with the Atlanta Falcons. Do you like that name being attached, being signed, or do you feel like, I don't know, maybe the Bears should get a younger center? Don't break the bank on a center that's not exactly like a top-notch, high-end center, but do you still kind of like give Coleman Sheldon a look, and then maybe draft another one, draft a center in the day 2 or day 3?
Yeah, you mentioned Dahlman. He'd probably be the top center in the market, so he's going to come in pretty pricey there. So
Right.
are you going to spend that much money on a guard and on a center? If that's your plan, I think that's something you got to look into. But I talk about how Tevin Jenkins listed among the top guards, Coleman Sheldon's listed among the top centers. So I mean,
Yeah.
if you're looking for a guy that kind of gets you by, maybe like you said, maybe get Coleman Shelton,
Yeah.
maybe draft a center, on third or fourth round, because you can usually find your centers in that's the sweet spot, right? If you don't get a guy early, like in late first, you can find your guys in that third or fourth round. So maybe it's Shelton back. You draft an interior guy to kind of work on it for a year, and then in a year later, it's his job. But you also have Ryan Bates on his roster still. We never saw him do a thing last year because of all the injuries. And then a year prior to that in Buffalo, he was a reserve. But before that, he was pretty decent, with the Bills. I mean, he was a guy that Ryan Poles coveted, 3 years ago. He finally got him. Just didn't work out, but he's coming in. He kind of fits the athletic profile Ben Johnson wants. He's a bigger guy, so cutting him doesn't really, it's not a huge contract where you need that money. So
Yeah.
I would not be surprised to see Ryan Bates stick around and possibly push for a starting job, depending on what they do in free agency.
On the defensive side, Dennis Allen takes over as the DC. I think it's safe to say, after failing twice as a head coach with the then Oakland Raiders and the New Orleans Saints, probably there won't be too many teams, both pro and college, will be asking him to be like the head coach anytime soon. Maybe he could be our own Steve Spagnuolo with our success, hopefully with the playoffs in the future. What's in store for the defense, and how drastically do you think the defense will look this upcoming season?
Yeah, they're going to look similar because both him and Flus run a four-man front. One thing we'll see a little more blitzing. Dennis Allen takes a few more chances. He'll also let his guys play a little more man-to-man. Flus was pretty much mostly zone. I know a lot of fans thought it was a lot of cover 2, old school Tampa 2 stuff, but he did a lot of cover 3 stuff and some match zone, and we'll see a little more man-to-man, and I think that's something that a guy like Tyreek Stevenson, that he may thrive in this system a little more. It's a little more aggressive. He'll have a chance to get up and play more press. But I'm excited. I think Dennis Allen, when he was just calling the shots for the Saints, I mean, that was a top 10 defense every year. Of course, he took over as head coach. It didn't work out for him there. It didn't work out when he was in the Raiders either. But as a defensive play caller, he's pretty damn good. And I think he was the best guy in the market. I think that was the best scenario that could have played out for the Bears was having Ben Johnson, obviously the offensive wonder kid. And now you get your defensive guru, who has been a head coach. I think he has 6 years experience as a head coach. So that's another good guy you can lean on because he's been there. He's done that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, defensively, DeMarcus Walker could be a guy that's been, mentioned as a possible, candidate to be cut. Do you keep him, or do you feel like, well, we could do a lot better with, than DeMarcus Walker?
I think if he's your primary starter, I think you should probably look to do better. But if you can bring a guy in and make him your defensive end 3, I think that's a good spot for him. He can play up and down that line. We saw him play defensive tackle at times in Chicago. Dennis Allen's defensive ends, everywhere he's coached, they've kind of been on the bigger side.
Yeah.
So I think DeMarcus Walker kind of fits that. Dennis Allen, one thing I've looked into his scheme a little bit is he doesn't mind having a more stouter defensive end because he wants him to kind of rush and contain and keep the quarterback in the pocket and then kind of get after him that way. So, I think Walker kind of fits that mold. And like I said, I don't think he should be your starter, but I think if he's your defensive end 3, he's a guy in rotation because you need 4 guys, right, at defensive end. And if one of them is DeMarcus Walker, I'm fine with it. Plus, you look at his money; he's not making ridiculous money. I mean, it's a very, very good contract for the Bears, at least for one more season.
So if Trey Smith, God forbid, goes elsewhere, the other option at guard would be Zach Martin, Will Fries, or Kevin Zeitler, just to name a few, which obviously is a little bit of a meh kind of position. Fries obviously is only going to be 27, I believe, in March or April, so he's got some young potential there. But out of the guys that I just mentioned, is Kevin Zeitler might be a good candidate because he played for Ben Johnson last year.
Yeah, I think Fries may be your Trey Smith plan B. If Smith
Yeah.
falls through, I think Fry's probably the next best guard in the market because he said his youth, he's a little younger. I think he'd probably be the next, as far as the price tag goes, he'd be the next guy that kind of gets paid. I don't think the Bears are going to go after both of them because, like I said, this because of the price. But I think a guy like Zeitler, like you said, he played with Detroit. He understands Ben Johnson's terminology. He still plays pretty good football. You can probably get him on a 2-year deal, maybe a 3-year deal with 2 years, mostly guaranteed. And then, like I said, you draft your guy, and then you bring your guy along behind these veterans because Zeitler, I think, is 34.
Right.
But if at guard you could play to 36. Play quality. It depends on what you have there and what they're asking to do. So yeah, I think Zeitler and Trey Smith would be a nice duo at guard for the Bears in 2025.
What about running back? I know DeAndre Swift was traded when Ben Johnson was the OC, and I think a lot of people are pointing that out and say, yeah, the DeAndre Swift's stay with the Bears might be numbered. Do you still keep him? Rework the contract, or obviously Bears probably need to draft another like a bell cow running back who can carry 20, 25 times in certain games. What is the future of DeAndre Swift in your opinion?
The year before he was traded, Smith had only 99 carries, right? That year with Ben Johnson calling plays, but he averaged over 5 yards a pop. That was his best yards per carry ever, was when he was in Ben Johnson's offense. So I think he also had 45, 46 catches that year. So if he is your number 2, he's your third down guy that kind of comes in and spells your big guy. I think there's a role for him. Plus, again, we talk about the money. If you cut him, you're going to have like $8 million in dead cap space, which just makes no sense. So you may as well keep him, find another guy to pair with him. We saw how DeAndre Smith is not very good running inside. When he's decisive and he hits the hole immediately, right, he's fine. But we saw too often where he would kind of think about it and he wouldn't really hit that hole so hard. So I think DeAndre Swift got better as the year went on, but I still think he's best used as your change of pace. He has good speed. He's great in the screen game. He can line up and run routes like a receiver. And the fact that Ben Johnson utilized him effectively the 1 year together when he was calling plays from a couple of years ago, like I said, his highest yards per carry of his career, over 40 catches. His touches were way down. He stayed fresh. I think that's the best plan with DeAndre Smith. Then you go find another guy. Maybe you spend in free agency. I mean, we saw the Lions do it. I mean, they went out and got David Montgomery. They spent there because they want another back in there. So maybe you'll see them look at the second. I don't think they're going to go out and get like a Saquon Barkley type, spend that kind of money. Right. But maybe there's a guy that kind of next tier down that they trust. They think they kind of come in. I know the Broncos, Javonte Williams, I think it is.
Yeah, that name was popped out there. Yes,
he's a free agent, 25 years old. He's probably not going to break the bank. He probably make a little more than David Montgomery's deal was, which I think was $5 million per year a couple years ago. So again, you sign him, and then next year you let Swift walk, so that way you kind of recoup the money you're going to give to Williams. He's more of a true three down guy. He doesn't have Smith's speed, but he's pretty good in the passing game. He's a very good pass blocker. So I think you have that guy coming in, or you look to the draft, and I think it all kind of see how it plays out, because this is a pretty good running back class too. But if Smith is going to be your number 2, your number 1's got to be able to come in and pass block, catch out of the backfield, be the guy between the tackles. So there's some options here, but I think they're definitely going to address the position somehow.
A couple more minutes with Lester Wiltfong from Windy City GridIron, talking about the Bears and their off season. You've been hearing about, of course, the connections, the Bears' connection with the Myles Garrett and Micah Parsons and everything. Let's be real here, Lester. Neither names are really, really realistic. In your opinion, my opinion, I just don't think that the Bears are not in liberty to, give up draft picks so freely like they did with, Khalil Mack under Ryan Pace, correct?
I mean, it's fun to talk about. I think it'd be great.
Yes, it is fun, yes.
I think if this were 2026 and the Bears had a year under Ben Johnson and they were going to be, they kind of look back and they know where the franchise stood, making a big splashy move makes sense. But I think year one of Ben Johnson, I think you kind of want to wait and kind of let this team have the year to kind of build itself up. I think they'll be good this year, at least pushing for a playoff spot. But Parsons or Myles Garrett, that's a move you make when you feel you're a Super Bowl contender. So I think the Bears are going to sit this one out. And I think those guys, I think they may get moved and they make it move to a contender.
There are a couple of names out there who are actually being put on the trading block. Deebo Samuel, Coop as well with the Rams. I forgot the name of it. I apologize.
Cooper
Kupp. Yes. If you had to pick one, who do you want? One, or do you be like, nah, I don't need any of them?
If I had to pick one, I think Cooper Kupp probably makes more sense for this team. He'd be coming in and he could really work that slot, and he's another guy that great hands, good locker room guy. That's not to say Deebo's not a good player. I just think Deebo kind of got exposed a little bit last year, kind of wore down a little bit.
Right.
But honestly, I don't think either one's coming. I think the Bears are gonna. I think they're gonna look for a wide receiver 3, maybe Tim Patrick, who was with the Lions last year.
Right.
They may look
somebody who obviously play for Ben.
Yeah, they may look for a guy a little cheaper. They may look to the draft. They still have Scott still there, who I thought was going to have a role in this offense. But when they made a trade for Keenan Allen, obviously, now what do you do with Scott? He doesn't play special teams. He's your third or fourth receiver. There's just not a place for him to kind of get reps. So I think if he's a guy that kind of come in and have a nice offseason, he may have a place, but I don't think you can count on him. I think they're going to address wide receiver 3 at some point in free agency to kind of get a more a trusted value, a trusted veteran in that role.
The NFL Draft Combine is in 2 weeks or so. I'm sure your website is going to be really, really ramped up with the prospects to keep an eye out on both sides of the ball there. Any particular draft prospects that you are kind of interested in keeping an eye on, or you think that he will look good in the Bears uniform?
I mean, like the usual suspects. Like I said, it's a pretty deep defensive tackle class. The kid from Michigan, Mason, I believe.
Graham,
Mason Graham is the guy, and the offensive tackles, LSU kid Campbell, and the kid from Texas, Banks. I'll be watching these guys. The kid who's had a great Senior Bowl out of North Dakota State. His name escapes me.
Gray Zabel, yeah,
Gray Zabel. He's another guy. So yeah, you're gonna want to see how these guys perform. The thing with Ben Johnson, it's not strictly a outside zone team. He's not looking just for these athletes. He's looking for guys to kind of move you in duo as well. So as far as the O-line goes, when the combine comes, that's usually the day I really paid the most attention, because I just like watching those guys work and kind of see how they're coached and how they move things. But yeah, the combine's going to be great. I know we're trying to get one of our guys out there. We're working on the credentials right now. I know Jacob at Fonda's going to have a ton of draft stuff popping up. He's already got his working on his big draft board. He's going to have his combine board coming out soon. So yeah, we'll have a ton of draft stuff always popping as well.
Absolutely. I had the pleasure of talking to Jacob on my live stream twice, and the one not too long ago, back in January as well. So, Jacob is an incredible draft expert. He obviously writes for your website, and he's also been doing a lot of work with the PFN as well, Pro Football Network as well, posting his mock draft there as well. So Lester, let's talk about the NFC North in general before we go. Sam Darnold, he's out of there from Minnesota, and I think this is JJ McCarthy's job to lose next year, right?
Seems that way. I mean, like I thought all along that Darnold made the most sense with the Raiders. Just seemed like that was like when the whole Ben Johnson thing came up. I'm like, well, that's what, because there's no quarterback in Vegas. But I'm like, well, if you're gonna go after Ben Johnson, you better have a plan. I think the only plan you have is at this point is Sam Darnold. So I thought that was gonna be the plan. Then it still looks like it makes the most sense. I mean, because you don't really have nothing in there unless you're just gonna go full rebuild for year one and just bite the bullet. I can't see it happening. But yeah, but this has got to be McCarthy. I mean, they got to turn to him, and I know the Vikings fans are very high on him. But again, it's a rookie. Essentially, he missed his whole first season. He's going to be coming in here. He had some issues as it was coming out of college.
Yeah.
So, we'll see. I mean, I think it's good for football if he kind of comes in and plays good. So, I'm as a Bears fan, I want to, of course, see the Vikings lose each week. But as an NFL fan, I'm kind of hoping that the kid does pretty good.
Obviously, Detroit lost in the divisional round at home in a pretty shocking manner. They lost both coordinators, and then several other coach as well. Are you worried that maybe the Lions are going to fall off a cliff, or do you feel like, I think there's still a legit team that can win the division 12, 13 games next year?
Yeah, I think they might step back a touch. I mean, just because, they lost a ton of coaches, they've been up there, they had some crushing defeats, but look, I think Dan Campbell was a really good football coach. I know when he was hired, it was oh my God, this guy's a knucklehead. He's a meatball, right? This whole thing,
the bite the kneecaps.
Yeah. But man, the players really like that. I mean, I talk a lot about when Flus was hired, he's kind of corny, right? And that corny stuff works if you're winning, and the players buy into it, and then they believe you and they believe in your message. Flus's message turned out to be a bunch of BS, right? Because he wasn't accountable. He didn't hold his guys accountable.
Right.
Dan Campbell's as corny as they come, right? He talks about the grit, like you said, biting the kneecaps. He has the huge coffee, all the caffeine buzz.
Yes.
He feeds into all these stereotypes of like a meatball guy, but he says it, and the players believe it because he's accountable. He holds players accountable. He holds himself accountable. I don't know if you listen to a Dan Campbell press conference. I mean, that guy, he falls on a sword for his players. It's always him.
Yeah.
It's him. It's his coaches. They got to coach better. That's what you want. You want your guy out there shielding your players from criticism, and that's what he does. And so I don't think they'll fall off as much. I think they've made some nice hires around their coaching staff. I think Jared Goff has turned himself into a pretty good quarterback. They have a good running game. They have a great offensive line. I think they're going to be fine. And then what about the Packers? Are the Packers going to fall off with Jordan Love? I mean, I think as a Bears fan, that's what we want to see. But I like Matt LaFleur. He's a good football coach. So I think the NFC North has four good coaches.
Mm-hmm. With the Packers, I think you definitely need to have a number one receiver. I know Matt LaFleur was like, yeah, we don't need number one, or if he keeps hearing about it, he's going to puke or something like that.
Yeah.
But, Josh Jacobs at a Super Bowl radio roast said we need a number one, and obviously that did not sit well with Dontavian Wicks. I don't know if there's any feelings being hurt and all that kind of stuff. They could also use another, like a legit pass rusher. Trey Hendrickson could be available if the Bengals are too cheap, like they've always been known for. Yeah, so there are some interesting storylines within the NFC North that could really impact the upcoming season. What about Aaron Rodgers? Do you think he's done, or do you feel like he's going to have to suck it up and take a starting job with the lesser teams like Tennessee, Oakland, or wherever it might be?
Yeah, that's another interesting one. I mean, like I said, I still think Darnold's the play in Vegas, but if that doesn't fall through, or if maybe Rodgers really can sell himself to Tom Brady, I mean, that may a place he ends up there. So I'm just sick of Aaron Rodgers. I just want him to go away. Just everything is about him is about him. Yes. He's just too. It's just time. I mean, he wasn't very good this last year in New York, but he wants to keep playing, and someone's going to pay him. Someone's going to bring him in, and we'll see how that works out. And then, of course, who knows? I mean, maybe he kind of waits it out and kind of sees what happens. And all it takes is one injury, right, in the training camp. And then all of a sudden now Aaron Rodgers is a hot commodity again. So we'll see what happens.
Absolutely. Well, Lester, I appreciate you doing this on this late evening over there in the Chicago area. Thank you very much for joining us. For those of you who are kind enough to tune in to watch us on this Valentine's Day, follow Lester on his website, WindyCityGridIron.com, and also follow Lester at Wiltfong Jr. as well. I changed my X handle at Bears Fan Steven. I write for BearGogglesOn.com, and as well as the fan-sided NFL page as well. I'll be doing a lot of the off-season stuff for the both website as well. Lester, thank you very much. Have a great evening, great weekend, and look forward to having you before, hopefully in a month or so before the draft, and then maybe we can have a better idea where the Bears are before the draft with the free agency and everything. So thank you very much for doing this tonight.
Sounds good, Steven. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. And we look forward to having you on next time on the Double A Team podcast live stream. Good night and have a wonderful weekend, everybody.